Hi everyone, thank you for coming to join us for this evening's live readings with this wonderful crew of authors. It might be slightly crazy, just as a warning, but it's going to be a lot of fun. And without further ado, we're going to kick straight off into it. So we're going to be starting with Hollow, which I have read various iterations of, back from this is all vibes and beautiful writing to actually this is a really great plot and really deep characters. And so I will hand you over for the first reading.
Hi everybody, I am Taylor, and my book called Hollow comes out from Peachtree Teen in fall 2025. I don't yet have a release date, but you can add it on Goodreads. I'm going to read from the last chapter before Act 2. It's very tense. To give you some background, the main character, Cassie, has woken up after a night camping. She got into an argument that she barely remembers with her love interest, Jack, and one of her other best friends, Melody. And the only person remaining at the campsite with her is her other best childhood friend, Blake. And they're trying to figure out what to do. Okay. Lightning shattered the campsite. Blake yelled, covering his face, turning toward the trees. Come on, we have to find shelter. She didn't remember falling, gripping the earth with her fingernails. Cassie stood, drawing an arm across her face, everything strangely distorted, her nose filled with bitter, bitter ozone. No, I need to find them. Just give me a second. Her voice was so distant in her own ears, blood pulsing too fast through her body. I need to. She needed her carabiner. She needed to feel safe. Cassie threw herself through the rainfly of her tent, fingers shaking on the zipper. She dug through the damp fabrics for her carabiner. But there was no comforting turn of dulled metal, no rough edge of the latch between her fingers. It wasn't under her sleeping bag or in her pack or tucked in the creases of the tent. It was gone. What's wrong? Blake appeared behind her, hand on her back. I had it last night. I know I did. What? Had what? Blake shook his head. We need to go now. Someone must have taken it. It was the only explanation. Or, her logical mind roared, she'd drunkenly thrown it in the waterfall's pool. Or lost it there. She shouldn't have drunk so much. She was such an idiot. Maybe her mom had been right after all. She couldn't handle this. She couldn't handle anything. With a metallic-tasting gasp, she tore from the tent, from Blake. No, you need to go. You go get help. I'm going to find Jack and Melody. I'm sure they're already nearly down by now. I'm not leaving you. We need to stick together. Cassie whirled on him. Stick together, she cried. You let them leave. Someone needs to get them before they die out there. Crows flew up from the trees, startled. Tears streamed down her face as she shouldered her bag. Electric anger worked its way from her chest to her fingertips. Blake stared at her, his hands shaking, his eyes reddening. You're right. I'm sorry, Cassie. I'm sorry. I never should have. It had to be a bad dream. She squeezed her eyes shut, tapping her fingers on her temples. 1, 2, 3. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Kayak, civic, radar level. Anagrams, intonations to save her from the edge of a meltdown. It wasn't working. Nothing was working. When she opened her eyes again, she was still just standing in front of a sobbing Blake. Another spear of lightning. Fear moved through her, a thing alive. The cackle of crow calls filled the air. I'm sorry, he sobbed, his head in his hands. I'm so sorry. Cassie Davis was no hero, but she needed to try. Heart pounding, she turned toward the trail. I'm going to find them. But when she turned toward the trail, she stopped in her tracks, ears ringing with insistent panic. Green clouds punctuated the sky, a great wide trough between them cradling a sliver of blue. Green clouds meant high winds, isolated thunderstorms and hail, freezing, drenching rain, sometimes even tornadoes. Cassie's breath caught in her chest, a whining yelp twisting to nothing but whispers in the back of her throat. If she was going to do this, she needed to do it fast. Her gasped breath tore a hole in the back of her throat, her heart thrumming too fast. 1 foot in front of the other, she passed beneath the trees. Wait, Cassie, Blake called. We need to talk about this. She paid him no mind. She needed to find them. She needed to find Jack. Cassie! Cassie! Faint from behind her. Blake would simply have to follow her in. He was experienced enough. He would be fine. She carried on. She sought the blazes on the trees marking the trail, followed them, lost them, doubled back, lost them. White marks devoured by shadows. Black feathers shuffled in and out of the trees, shadowing her. Their voices so close to human. Cassie spun in the forest. She just needed to find the blazes again, and then she would be able to find the way to the peak. She walked deeper into the blackness of the trees, deeper, her feet striking hard pack, her soul slipping on roots. The trail twisted hard, and Cassie stumbled on something slick, unnatural, a bag. Her stomach lurched. Jack's bag split open, discarded, gutted like an animal. She wouldn't have anything, no water, no compass, no map. Cassie needed to find her now. The whispering began again. Cassie, 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 the sound of her own name repeated until it disintegrated into sound and nothing, a threadbare, well-loved blanket going to pieces, overtouched, reduced to nil. But then she heard something else, sharper above the whispering of her name. Crows. Hundreds of them. They called out in frantic, hoarse voices, their wing beats adding to the howl of the wind. A cry wrenched its way out of Cassie's throat, inaudible above the storm. She tried to run. She really did. She raced with every ounce of energy she had left in her body, blood slamming through her heart, but every gap through the forest was a dead end blocked by boulders and trees. Wind whipped at her face, beads of rain striking her cheeks so hard she couldn't tell if she was crying. Lungs heaving, Cassie swiped a hand over her brow and squinted into the storm. There had to be a trail. There had been one yesterday, but all she saw was the black, black, black of the trees, the shadows, no trail, no map. No Jack, no Jack, no Jack. The crows. Lightning struck, the trees shone electric white, talons wrapped into Cassie's messy hair, beaks strove down hard. She was no longer anywhere near a trail. They came for her. The crows cried out, their rusty voices unforgiving against the whine of tinnitus in Cassie's ears. They pressed into her so close she could feel the heat of their feather-crowded bodies, could hear the chitin in their wings scraping like so much splintering glass, their wet eyes rolling back and forth in their sockets. She could feel their beaks seeking the softest hidden part behind her ears, at the nape of her neck. They would peel her flesh from her bones, carrion for the forest. She would never find Jack. She and Melody were simply gone. Cassie felt it then, the same terror as when she'd lain on the tile of the cafeteria, a trussed prey animal awaiting its slaughter. Suddenly, she was back on that floor, crumbs littering the stained, sticky liniment, rubber soles of the police officer's shine black shoes, the cold humidity of the plastic flooring against her cheek, her ears a steady high ringing, sucking sound away. Cassie screamed as she tore through a copse of pine trees, branches grabbing at her face and arms and torso and legs like they might pull her back into the darkness. Her voice careened into the shadows, her despair a full meal for Hollow Ridge. Her heart beat a frantic tattoo. Run, 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 run. The trees bent overhead like they had something to say about her, like they would reach down and pluck her into their branches. Cassie, Cassie, Cassie. And then welcome relief, gentle words doubling, tripling, echoing above the thrashing storm. Come to us, you will be safe. Cassie spun and ran toward the whispered voice, seeking any safety in this storm. As the boughs dipped down to grasp her, her toe caught on something. Paint shattered along her ankle, into her shin. She fell and struck the ground hard, her vision flashing black, white, black. The crows screeched at her back, the sound devouring any scream that might have coiled in the back of Cassie's throat. Hey, are you okay? A voice, real this time, sliced the thunder. Help! Help! Cassie called, squinting in the lashing rain. Her nose filled with the metallic scent of ozone. I'm here! The form of another person flashing in the lightning, stop motion running toward her. Thank God, thank God, thank God. A rough hand in hers, pulling her off the ground, holding her close. Come on, I've got you. You're okay. It's going to be okay.
Yay. I love it. And it's just like, it's so not going to be okay.
It's not going to be okay.
It's not going to be okay.
That was so tense.
Thank you.
Language is so good.
Oh, unfortunately, the whole book is like that.
It is. It is just, it's amazing. So I should mention as well that in the description bit at the bottom, there are links for all of the authors. So you can go to their websites, Linktrees, add books on Goodreads, buy things, pre-order things. So please do. And also we can see your comments. So hello.
Hi.
Hello.
We are in different dimensions here. We're like a minute in time ahead of you guys. So if you do leave a specific comment, you might need to tag who it's for because we won't will be
Someone-
already past whatever you're commenting
Someone
on.
just called, bruh, I'm tired. Bruh, I'm tired.
Ed,
I
Ed,
mean-
it's bruh.
Bruh. Okay, I've just nailed a millennial.
At least I read that as a London bruh. Bruh.
I'm too old.
I think we can all empathize with that, though. Like,
I'm actually gonna say goodbye because everybody before we got on saw this, but I took a shot of Dayquil. I am really under the weather. I'm gonna go back to bed. Thank you.
Oh, I
Thea.
hope you feel better
Thank you,
soon.
Taylor.
Hey, Taylor. That
Thank
was
you
awesome.
for
Bye,
coming.
everybody.
Feel better.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, so I will hand over to the next person. So next we have Mistress of Lies, which has recently come out and which I am devouring, somewhat ironically.
It's a
And
beautiful
which my
cover.
son recognises. My 2.5-year-old can point and go, "That's Corin's book," because I walked around the bookstore, which they rearranged when I went to buy that and the Phoenix Keeper, going, "They must be here somewhere. Like, these are two of the biggest releases of the summer. They're in this store." And I had a 2-year-old just walking around behind me going, "They must be here somewhere." And then suddenly went, "That one, Mommy." I was like, "Oh, thank you. I'm glad someone has eyes." So over to you.
Hi, I'm Corin, writing as KM Enright. My debut fantasy romance, Mistress of Lies, just came out last month. And I am going to be reading to you from the beginning of the book because it is a political intrigue / murder mystery story, and anything past chapter 3 is incomprehensible without context. So I'm just going to give you guys the opening. It should have been more difficult to assassinate her father. Not in the actual execution of it. That Sean had prepared for. Her father was a powerful blood worker and had once been considered the brightest of his generation. That had been many years ago, though, and Lord Antonin Leclerc had fallen quite far indeed. But still, he had guards, magical wards, and a lifetime of training at his disposal, and she had accounted for all these things. No, there should have been something, anything, in her heart that railed against this. Despite everything he had done over the 2 decades of her life, patricide was still the most despicable of all crimes. It ought to twist her stomach and fill her with guilt. She shouldn't relish this kill, shouldn't feel this boundless relief. But she did. She was a shattered, broken thing, and this only proved it. Her father lifted the glass to his mouth, the amber whiskey sloshing in the finely cut glass, and took another deep drink as he shifted through the papers in front of him. Sean watched as he licked his lips, taking in more of the poison that would give her power over him. It was a potent poison, frightfully expensive, but she had learned long ago that secrets were worth far more than coin. It had taken her years to find, and a couple bits of hard-won information to pay for it. Yet watching her father drink it, in a glass handed over to him by his own daughter, Sean knew she would have paid any price for this moment. So she sipped idly at her wine as she waited, fiddling through the books that had been laid out across her father's grand wooden desk. Books of their financial records, filled with tables of transactions written in the cramped hand of her father's secretary. They detailed how much had been spent by their estate over the past years, or what remained of the Leclerc estate. Drained and destitute from generations of mismanagement, made worse by her father. But by morning, the books would be hers, and that was what mattered. Her father coughed suddenly, a deep, racking thing that shook his whole body. Sean cocked her head to the side, eyes wide in the perfect mimicry of a doting daughter. "Are you all right, father?" Lord Leclerc looked up, his gray eyes narrowed in that paranoid way of his. He opened his mouth to speak, but was interrupted by another round of coughs, blood splattering onto the desk before him. Sean stirred quickly, knocking the books aside. Her glass crashed to the floor, shattering, the wine pooling at her feet. Deep, dark, like drying blood. She smiled at the fear in her father's eyes. Another cough, another spurt of blood. Sean leaned forward, dipping her fingers in the warm liquid. She swirled them around and brought them to her lips, unminding of the poison. The antidote already flowed in her veins. Well, Lord Leclerc managed. About time. Sean sucked her fingers into her mouth and felt the power explode through her. The blood acted as a catalyst, a source that connected them, forming a bridge that she could use to reach out and, she bent the very blood in his veins to her will, flinging him against the wall and slamming him into the hard mantle, the sounds of his bones snapping the sweetest music to her ears. Circling around the desk to where her father had fallen, she felt his blood calling to her, fighting her control with every last bit of his strength. He was strong-willed. He was stubborn, but she was indomitable. With a flick of her fingers, she had him sprawled on the floor, his arms pinned to his sides by the force of her magic. He struggled to move, thrashing against the bonds of her will, but for now his blood was hers to command. Sean produced a dagger from the sheath up her sleeve, feeling its comforting weight in her hands. Her father eyed it, recognition shining in his face. Of all the weapons she could have chosen, the knives he had gifted her for her most recent birthday, the steel-tipped claws she had earned from the academy, she chose this, her mother's dagger in her bare hands. Sean sank to her knees, not caring that her fine, silken dress was stained in the process. Goodbye, father. Placing the knife against his throat, she only hesitated when she saw him smile. You are always my favorite, he rasped out. Do me proud. Grimacing, Sean dragged her knife through her skin, feeling it split under the strength of her hand. She cut deep, down to the bone, embedding the steel in his flesh. The blood welled and spilled, but she dared not remove it, not until it was done. She couldn't have him healing himself. She doubted the punishment would be as light as it was last time. Then she had been but a child of 8, lashing out in a fit of anger and despair. When he had driven her mother from their home in one of his fits of paranoid violence, and she had taken up her dagger and turned it against him. She had failed then. She wouldn't fail now. This was carefully planned vengeance, and she watched until the light faded from his eyes, his blood seeping into her dress and staining her hands. Still she remained, waiting for the body to grow cold, for the skin to pale, for all signs of life to vanish. The door creaked open, and Bart whispered, "Is it done?" When her father's guards didn't rush in after him, she knew that he had played his part as well. Sean dragged her fingers through her father's blood one last time. This blood lacked vibrancy, cloying and congealing. There was power still there, but it was dulled. It was the blood of a dead man.
Ooh.
Just
Brilliant.
chills.
What the?
Can I just say Ed's face during this was stellar.
Yeah, it was good.
You couldn't see it because, but it's watch the playback. It's great.
I
Yeah, we were
lose my cool
reacting.
halfway through that. I was like, "What is happening? This is amazing! What the hell is going on?"
Oh my god.
We knew you were going to bring the
Can't believe
comment.
Thank you.
No, it is one of the best opening pages. Like, I literally gave it to my dad, like, you just have to read the opening page. It's like this kind of book.
That's one of the best openings I've ever heard. What the hell is that?
Thank you.
Isn't that great?
I really appreciate hearing that.
I might just go. I can't compete with that. What the hell?
Sit down, Ed.
I'm sure that's not true.
I'm gone. I'm giving up. Oh wow.
Unfortunately, like Taylor, I've had something come up, so I have to dip. But thank you for having me here and having me read. This was a lot of fun, and I'm so sorry I'm going to miss everyone else's readings.
Well, thank you for coming. We really loved hearing it.
Thank you.
Thank
See you
you.
later.
That was amazing.
Bye.
See ya.
Have a good night.
We are not, as far as I know, just doing a countdown.
Yeah.
It's
Everyone
like a
just
murder mystery.
I
I mean,
isn't
it feels
Like a
like
really
what
boring
happens to the last
Agatha Christie.
person?
yeah. Reading alone.
I'm the last. Shut up,
What
Larry, I'm the last
happens to
person.
Wait, does that mean
I'm
that we
the
get
killer.
to the end of the game and Ed is the murderer?
Oh my
Or is he
God.
just going to be reading to himself?
That's what I do anyway, so it's fine.
So, following that, we have don't make that face.
I have to follow that. That was very good.
But yours is brilliant.
Oh,
I read yours in a day and a half?
pretty quick. It's a novella, so
It is
it's
a
short.
novella. But I love how you span, like, if there is a scale of fantasy, then
Yeah,
your
I do
Davy
everything.
Daughters of Tith, which is like non-human POV, I suppose you'd call it epic fantasy, maybe? I don't know. It's huge.
That epic high fantasy, very big.
Oh.
And then my
But
teeny
not really.
tiny
And then you go to this one, which is really dark and practically
Oh, look
horror.
at that cover.
Very
look at that
different.
cover.
You
They're
are the
very
scale of fantasy.
The cover of this book is one of
Oh.
my favorite.
Sorry, it's so
covers of the
shiny we
year.
can't really see it, but
Is that
Yeah,
like
you
a
can-
crow raven thing?
yeah, it's like a black bird plunging into water is how I do the alt text.
Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah, this artist is from
Yeah.
Australia. Her name is Jenna Vincent. She is amazing. I follow her on Twitter. I should link it after this. But yeah, really good. Yeah, so I'm going to read from this.
Here's some of Your Blood and Bones.
Yeah, Your Blood and Bones. Okay, I'm going to read a scene that is pretty close to the beginning. It's part of the opening scene, just because it's fun and you need less context, obviously. So the context so far is the girl and the boy. They don't have names. They are simply called the girl and the boy throughout the novella. They are running away from their village. And they've just gotten into clothing that they're going to take on their trip. So, okay, so everything the boy gave the girl was much too big, but with some adjustments, she could stop it from falling off. She was grateful for the coverage, finally able to hide her problematic skin. The boy dressed similarly in bulky layers, but the clothing actually fit him. He handed her a second, newer coat and a heavy bag to strap to her back. Less for me to carry alone, at least. Why do you have this ready? The girl asked, like you were going to flee the village into the night. I wouldn't have fled into the night. He ducked out of the birch copse, leaving the empty cache revealed, and walked past her. If things had gone as planned, I would have left in broad daylight without anyone chasing me. She began to shiver violently as the clothing held the remaining heat in her body against her, heat that would keep her alive, until the villagers caught them. Don't you know what I am? She shouted at his back. He had to know. There could be no other reason to have to save a girl from her deranged family in a frenzy of madness, about to cut her to pieces and burn the remains. If he hadn't known before, he would know now. He must have seen her skin. The boy looked back, and suddenly the night just beyond him was full of red light. It reflected on his face. Fire. The air reverberated with the first slow beat of a drum. They're coming now, he said. You're going to have to run with me. They ran. The heavy bag knocked against the girl's back, and the overly large boots thudded on the rocks and threatened to trip her. She hadn't run in a year, at least, not since she'd grown too afraid of any injury that might expose her. The exertion was unexpected and extreme. Her breath burned her frozen lungs and the inside of her throat. The boy ran towards the sea. The girl struggled to follow. The slush of spring slid under her feet. Sucking mud slowed her steps. It almost took the boots. The boy staggered ahead of her as the land trended downwards, but kept his footing. Why run to the water? There was no boat on the island that would be unattended. There was no wood to make their own, and they wouldn't have time. The sound of the drum rose behind them. There would be no escape. Then the girl remembered the boy's father might have access to a boat. They were farmers, his family, and dirt poor as far as she knew. Before the boy's mother had died, she had sometimes done the washing for the girl's mother, for extra food, maybe with a penny on the side. But his father went on supply trips to the mainland for the village. No one from the island would travel the sea in winter, but the season changed. It was almost time. There could be a boat on the beach. The boy fell when they got to the bottom of the rocky, mossy slope, his speed propelling him onto his hands and knees against the earth. The girl slid down the last bit of the slope and sat beside him, exhausted, on the broken ice. Come on, he said, getting to his feet. We can't stop now. The girl was about to protest when she realized there was no point in arguing. Either they would die running or they would die sitting. It wasn't really up to the boy where she died. She didn't have to get up. He wouldn't wait for her. He wouldn't choose to die sitting, or he wouldn't have rescued her in the first place. She met his eyes in the dim light. There was no reason for her to run except that he had saved her. He had chosen to save her and really to die with her. Maybe she owed him a fight. And maybe there was a boat. She stood. The boy ran towards the shore, scuffing the untouched black silt of the field before the beach. The girl looked back across the heath and saw points of light in the night, torches. Her heart felt like it was going to explode. Ahead, the boy dropped out of sight behind the great bulwark of moss and grass that marked the beginning of the beach proper, where the high tide waves carved out the lower beach and the seabirds nested. The girl caught up and started to lower herself down as competently as she could, but when the wind from the sea hit her face, she was rocked by the stench of death. The moon broke through the clouds, and the boy was revealed clearly below. He stood on a carpet of dead creatures, feathers and bones and matted fur, clotted blood and white or rotted away eyes. There were no seabirds nesting in the tunnels under the overhang edge, only more bodies, spilling out of the earth like a waterfall of gore, snapped necks, broken limbs, and wings. What is this? The girl backed away from the overhang towards the villagers' torches, gaining on them across the field. No time, the boy said, reaching up the slope to take her hand. They've almost got us. She let him pull her down into the mass of dead animals, cringing as the thawing carcasses squelched under her 2 large boots. Her head swung wildly towards the sea. The waves rolled in under the bright moonlight, and there was no break in them. Nothing on the black beach. No boat. The tiny bones of the creatures cracked as she shifted her weight. At head height, someone looked back at her with dead white eyes, human eyes. She screamed. The boy pulled her against his chest, and she let him. There was nowhere to go if there was no boat. Why had the boy brought her to this place? Who was the man who hung out of the seabird houses like a scarecrow missing its stuffing? She looked over the boy's shoulder, and this time she studied the dead man, lit up in the silvery light of the moon. That's the blacksmith. Their blacksmith had been missing from the village for a month, ran away to the mainland in the middle of winter, someone said, but they all knew it was just as likely he had been wandering drunk on the heath and gotten lost in one of the heavy snows. They'd searched for a few days before abruptly stopping. After that, everyone knew he was out of reach or dead. The girl's father had planned to send for a new one come spring. He would do that soon. The previous blacksmith's body must have been preserved by the cold. All of this must have been. I'm going to set a fire. The boy held her in front of him with both hands on her shoulders. He looked into her eyes. You hear the drum. You see the torches. You know they're coming. They will kill us. What happened to the blacksmith? She asked. Why is his body here? He let her go, and she slumped down amongst the corpses. The drum beat a steady thumping, nearer and nearer. Smoke curled before the girl's eyes, and she turned to see the boy with a handful of hay gently burning. He placed it on the ground between the remains and rolled up his sleeves. Her eyes widened. The fitful light of the small fire illuminated him, and there, in his snow-pale skin, were the shadows of gray feathers. A ridge ran up each of his arms from his wrist, jutting bone almost breaking the skin. She smoothed a hand over her own wrist, just starting to show the same pattern. Now she knew why he had saved her. But that meant he was a monster, just like she was, and she knew what must have happened to the blacksmith. The boy pressed hard on the growing ridge of bone, and the skin that concealed it split. Blood spilled out, hard to see in the dim light, but the girl knew it would be darker than it should be, almost purple. It gushed into the growing fire, and black smoke billowed around them. The boy pushed the severed skin aside and dug into his flesh. The girl watched in horror. She had done the same before, but it was worse to see it done to someone else. The boy must have done it before, too. He barely flinched. The girl turned away to be sick and found herself staring into the rotted eyes of a rabbit. Smoke swirled against her cheek and stung her throat. Reality shifted. The rabbit moved. The choking smoke filled the lee of the bulwark. The boy breathed it in deeply and coughed. The girl covered her nose and mouth with her sleeve, but the smoke was impossible to escape. She remembered the unstoppable fire the boy had set in the village. She stood straight and looked back over the ridge towards their burning home and the mountain behind it. Their people were coming, close enough to be seen clearly now, despite the dark. Bodies shifted under her feet. The dead things began to move, and as they did, they screamed. The boy breathed loudly. He coughed and laughed. The girl felt him there, not just the warmth of his body near hers, but the haze of his mind, and the minds of the animals, and of the blacksmith. Frenetic, nonsensical thoughts assaulted her, the decomposing thoughts of the dead. The boy dug something out of his arm, long and flexible, his blood still dripping into the smoking fire. It was a feather, the barbs weighed down with gore. He dropped it into the small flame, and the smoke grew to cover them. The village people charging towards them slowed. The silver moonlight grew gray. The dead animals under the girl writhed away, dragging their broken bodies haltingly across the black sand toward the sea. The boy called after them, urging them on, commanding them to enter the water. The film of their minds stayed with the girl, clung to her. The blacksmith's decaying body arched its back and dragged itself after them. The boy knelt in the space as they left. He smothered the small flames and scraped the white ash into his hands, gathering it into a wax paper bag and putting it in the pack he carried. Then he stood and moved to follow his dead subjects. The girl's eyes wouldn't focus. She tried to watch the boy, but flares of false light distracted her. Her focus was drawn to the island instead. The black sand the boy walked onto was made of crushed bones and dead fish and the rock of the island. The rock of the island was suffused with the remains of those who had lived there and those who had visited never to leave. The girl felt them all. She looked back over the ridge at the advancing mob. Behind them, past the heath, past the village, the mountain reared up. The smoke in the girl's lungs let her feel the fire deep beneath the earth, molten rock, molten death. Death was in the earth and in the sky and in the sea. The mountain was lit with it. Unearthly voices spoke to the girl as her vision faded, tunneled, and locked on to the summit. The fire could burst from the mountain and come down to sweep the villagers away, join their bodies to the bodies of their predecessors. The fire only needed to be freed, and it could remove their rotten, false love from the earth. Just because someone was becoming a monster, did that mean you could forget they were also a person? Your sister? Your daughter? The girl's mind filled with images of her family's faces as they attacked her. Mother rushing into her room in the night, wrenching the sheets away to reveal her changing flesh, grabbing the girl's arm as she roused from sleep and pulling her near to reveal the shadows under her skin. Mother's face contracting into a rictus of hate and fear, screaming to bring the girl's brothers bursting through the door behind her. Father, standing back, more disappointed than anything. Did the girl see a tear in his eye, or had she imagined it? He didn't stop them, and quickly she was in the square, thrown on the ground in front of the others. Then the boy had come. He was big for his age, a full adult really at 18, but he shouldn't have been able to fight them. Not all of them at once, but they had been afraid, first of the boy, then of the fire. The boy called to her and she was freed of the memory. She turned away from the mountain. The dead things had made it to the water. They grasped at each other as they entered the surf, forming a seething, floating carpet of living death. She ran towards them, towards the boy. The world seemed to slow again as their eyes met. Without words, she showed him the mountain and its promise of revenge, the molten fire that was available to them with the power they shared, power over the dead, power over life and death, which were one and the same. Both looked upon the approaching villagers and thought for a frozen moment. In the end, they left the fire where it was. The girl stepped into the water and took the boy's offered hand, climbing onto the writhing mass of bodies. They were drawn away from the shore by the dead's grasping feet, their paddling beneath the surface. There was a wolf's head by the girl's thigh, partially submerged, half its face rotted off, and the desiccated fur floating around its bones. It gargled in the water, one broken foreleg rising and falling, trying to push the boat out into the blue. Away. Oh my God. I'm done.
Just so not a funny passage, and you're
I know. And then I laughed at the end. Anyway, corpse raft, corpse boat.
Finished off the word desiccated. Amazing. I love the word desiccated. That's so much
I
death.
said that-
That's so good.
Yeah,
I
Yeah,
have to
so
keep on
much
here
cool.
because of the words corpse boat. So
corpse raft. Yeah, that was on Twitter. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's why I laughed. Oh my God.
Corpses.
Come to our
Amazing.
reading, corpse raft.
don't make me start choking about a corpse draft. I have to read next.
Okay, I'm gonna mute myself. Thank you.
So I think I'm reading next. I am reading next. So I should probably introduce myself since I'm hosting anyway, but I've surrounded myself with my name, so if you haven't got it by now. So I'm Alethea Lyons. I have a book coming out next week, which I'm going to be reading from. It is a collection of short stories. Sorry, someone has just typed in corpse raft, corpse raft, corpse raft. I will not be looking at comments while I'm reading my bit so I don't start laughing in the middle of it. So yes, I'm reading from a collection of short stories that take place directly after book 1, which is The Hiding. And they are mostly from Harper's point of view, who's the main character of The Hiding, and a couple from someone else's. But the one I'm going to read today is Harper's. And this is one of the stories that I wrote before I wrote The Hiding. I wrote book 2 first. I wrote some of these short stories from 1.5 first, then book 2, then book 1, and then the rest of 1.5. Because, continuity, who cares? So I am going to be reading from Never Alone Again. And basically, this woman has just shown up at the main character's house because Harper and her foster sister are from a demon hunting family and know how to do exorcisms and things like that. And this woman has brought her little girl to them because she's terrified that she's possessed or something horrible is wrong with her, which in fairness to the mother, it is. Mrs. Crawford shuddered, her jaw tight as she replied, "Please write this week's Sunday school verse." "Yes, Mamma." The girl picked up the pen to write. Her head remained bowed, brown curls hiding her eyes. As she wrote, she muttered to herself, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son." "Here, Mamma." Without looking, the girl slid the paper off the table and held it out to her waiting mother. Her movements were smooth, rehearsed, her voice flat. Without speaking, Mrs. Crawford passed the sheet to Grace, who glanced at it, then passed it to Harper. Reading it, Harper paled. The writing was spiked, as if the pen itself were enraged as it cut the words into the paper. Ears stone deaf, eyes blind shut, fingers broken, heartstrings cut. Can't hear me, can't see me, won't hold me, don't love me. Leave me alone and I'll kill you. Harper took a shaky breath, then walked over to the hearth where she picked up a box of matches and lit one. She held the paper in the flame until it caught, then threw it in the fireplace. Once it was no more than ash, Harper turned and knelt next to the girl. "May I?" Harper asked the mother, holding her hands over the child's head. Mrs. Crawford glanced at Grace, who nodded. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what else to do. Large gold rings clanked as Mrs. Crawford clenched her hands in her lap. "There is no need to apologize." Grace rested a hand on their visitor's arm. "You did the right thing. My father taught us how to deal with such things." "But what is it?" Mrs. Crawford wailed. "Is she bewitched? Cursed? Possessed?" "Perhaps you should wait in the kitchen." Grace helped the older woman to her feet and steered her out of the room. Harper placed a hand on the girl's forehead. Despite the warmth of the day, her skin was cold and clammy. Letting her hair fall over her face, concealing her violet gaze, Harper watched the child through her sight. The burning sensation of magic came swiftly, as though the child's desperation to be perceived dragged it out of her. "Look at me." Harper lifted the girl's chin. The child's eyes met Harper's sight. With a yelp, Harper fell back, bashing her elbow against the coffee table. The hairs on the back of her neck prickled when she raised her head to meet the girl's gaze again. A chill ran down her spine, oozed between her vertebrae, and dribbled over her ribs until the cold all but stopped her breath. Faint wisps hung in the air before her, the fire's heat more distant than the sun. She swallowed the bile in her throat and blinked, eyelids rasping over her cornea. Meredith blinked back at her, black membrane shuttering her eyes horizontally. Large pupils dominated, wreathed by vermilion irises. "You see me." The multi-tonal voice contained both the high pitch of the child and the deeper, gravelly tones of something darker and older. "What are you?" Harper whispered. The child's lips twitched into a contorted smile. "I am a friend." "Whose friend?" Harper asked, unable to tear herself away from the hollow eyes of the girl. Meredith's pupils widened, a black hole that sucked all light from the room. The fire diminished to sparks and cinder. Frost clawed at the windows. "Why, Meredith's, of course. She was so lonely, so tired of being good." The girl's laugh rattled like jagged glass. "Why her?" Harper's mouth moved, but the words came from a great distance. "She wished it." The girl tilted her head to the side. Pink lips twitched into a knife-edged smile. Harper's lips stretched, aching. "What do you wish, Sia? You have the power." "Does she have the power?" The words hung between them, almost visible in the vaporous air. When the child spoke, Harper's lips moved with her, a silent echo. Meredith was lonely. She found me. I wrote her plea to her mother, her father, her teacher, her priest. None of them listened. You are the first to see me. Pressure built behind Harper's eyes, as though someone had thrust their fingers into her skull and tried to force them out of their sockets. She wanted to blink, to shut her eyes tight before they burst. Meredith's eyes widened, pinning Harper's lids open, reflecting her violet stare. Children should be seen, not heard. That's what they always tell her. Her cries fell on uncaring ears, so I wrote her pain for all to see. I am her friend, her protector. The girl tilted her head, curls bouncing on her shoulders. Harper's head snapped to the side. Now you have seen. What will you do? She doesn't have to be alone anymore. Harper managed to force the words through cracked lips. We'll make sure she's taken care of. I'll be her friend. I promise. Her constricting throat choked on the words. Pain seared her lungs and heart as the oath took hold. Then Meredith's wish is answered. What is your wish, seer? I can see that which is hidden within you, the twisted path to the past. Will you let me help you? Crimson eyes bored into hers, consuming her will. The little girl tilted her head the other way, and Harper's head jerked, a perfect reflection. All you need do is wish it, and I am yours. The voice lowered, losing the childish quality, becoming seductive, beguiling. The girl leant forward, and the invisible bond drew Harper toward her. Their foreheads almost touched. The little girl raised her hand, one finger curled in beckoning. Bone ground against bone as Harper's hand rose and contorted in a mirrored claw. Let me be with you. Darkness consumed the girl's eyes, and the void sucked Harper in deeper. Let me love you. Harper's lips mirrored the words. Love you. What do you wish, seer? So close their mouths were almost touching, the words exhaled on Meredith's breath were sucked through Harper's lips and became part of her. Wish for your heart's desire. I wish. I'm done.
So creepy.
Oh, fantastic.
Dialogue amazing. Well done.
Amazing.
Oh, that voice.
I find mirroring things so creepy.
Thea, your readings are always as atmospheric as your writing. They're just beautiful.
Oh, thank you, Lamia. That's so kind of you.
I got like little, whatever the start of Goosebumps is. Whoa, God. Need
Shivers.
like a
Moment to recover.
yeah, I do need a moment to recover. I need a few days to recover.
So that is out next week. I will be reading a different one on Saturday's reading, which will probably be from the cat's point of view. Just to, and also because I love how Zero has 3 short stories from his point of view. He's barely in the hiding and he already has a fan club. So next up is going to be The Wingspan of Treason. So we're definitely getting into our epic fantasy now. And as well as being gorgeously written, if you haven't seen all of the maps that have been going up on Twitter, then you need to go and check out Lamia's social media because she's done them herself and they are the most gorgeous. You
She's
can't
too
mute yourself.
talented,
You're reading next.
I had to mute myself to cough. I'm just getting over a bug. Sorry. Hang on, one more time.
I think we're all sick at the moment.
Sorry. So yeah, I'm Lamia. My epic adult epic fantasy is due out on the 26th of November after like a year and a half's delay. I'm reading an excerpt from towards the beginning. I've never pitched this book before, so I'll just say that Klaus is a fugitive at this stage. He's crossing from where he's running away from home to a very different place. And amongst many things, he's a budding map maker. The plays were as inconstant as the clans. Often, the caravan followed trails that disappeared under dunes at the whim of the wind. Sometimes they favoured winding detours around suspicious ground where the horses' hooves seemed to sense the approach of deep ruts or sink sand. It was a land as barren as the north was abundant, but as empty as a clean page in a forgotten book. There'd been no sign yet of the dreaded wind. Klaus had never felt anything like this bleak tranquility before, but it burnished rather than buried his gnawing ache for the green breath of Invalmar. So he began a map. It began with longing for the north. He gazed over the dunes as they rolled by, emptying his mind of thoughts. If he didn't focus on any single spot, the dunes melted into ribbons of dusty gold, and his mind drifted away until the unfettered particles of his consciousness flowed as easily as the innumerable grains of sand. Thus the land imprinted itself first onto his mind, then onto parchment. While the others duelled or chattered over cards, he sharpened his pencil, drew upon every memory he had of Invalmar, and preserved each passing hour for his parchment. Later, he would immortalize it in ink, but not yet. Onto the page he put the memory of cold northern mountain crags and hidden cave entrances buried in snow, the twists and turns of the 4 Invalmari rivers, the rich green entrails of the Piver. Fibler or the Durindin would sometimes sit beside him, watching his map grow. He drew the gush of the Ninvelin past the border market towns. At a tangent to Noisy Tree, he marked the Ostrad Dam with a stubborn smudge of lead. Then he began again with the grasses and dunes and the rolling hills of the plains. It is an uncommon ire that can so clearly summon the land, the bird-keeper told him. They'd paused to escape the midday sun under a huddle of eucalyptus trees. A sweet-throated grass thrush rested in the branches above them, offering soft interjections. Good instruments and many measurements do the work for me, Klaus replied. But it seems you do not forget a thing once you have seen it, said the bird-keeper. No doubt the memory of a chronicler serves you well. Is that where you learned cartography? Klaus glanced at his parchment. Making maps was something he had always had, like the colour of his eyes. No, it was just the next best thing to visiting new places and taking them home, even if they're beyond all reach. He paused. Foolish, I know. Not foolish, the little man smiled. What is a map, Master Tristan? Is it merely a means by which one man tells another what belongs to him? Or is it a reminder of the sacred duty that binds him to the boundaries entrusted to him? He glanced up at the dozy grass thrush. These birds, would they see this map as you and I, or do they see a true reality? Of the promise of Windor Haven, of good foraging, waiting peril, a land drawn not on divisions born of whim, but of necessity, a world built not on our demands of the land, but on its demands of us. Klaus lowered his pencil. You know something of the Simurin, then? The very first map makers understood all this, the bird keeper replied. For them, a map was not for measuring kingdoms, but for the striking of symmetry. Without symmetry, there can be no justice. Even the great Lorindar himself had to learn this. Was he Cimmerian? No, he was the last custodian in the south, said the bird keeper almost lovingly. A man who grew wise enough to remake himself before his doorway arrived. Few of us are so fortunate. Klaus shivered. For a moment, he imagined an unintelligible current that flowed not from his mind onto the page, but washed back into him from the paper and ink. The sun's getting to my head. An indignant trill sounded overhead as Ravi displaced the grass thrush, and the tree shook with their ensuing argument. The bird keeper laughed, but Klaus's finger hovered again over the smudge that was the Ostrad Dam, momentarily as heavy-hearted as though he had delivered this grave injustice himself. That's it.
Wow, are you doing the audiobook yourself? Because you sound amazing.
No, I'm not doing the audiobook.
Sound great.
Beautifully written,
Thank you.
written and beautifully illustrated, and yeah, it's just beautiful.
Thank you.
Lami is like one of those, what's the word? Polymaths. That's the word, isn't it? He just does everything.
Stop, Ed. I think this will be the unmaking
Okay.
in me if I try and record my own audiobook. It's 670. I don't even know how many pages it is. So
As soon as I get yours, Lamia, I'm going to be holding it up next to Daughters of Tith and seeing which one is the book.
Sounds
Yeah.
like they're
two
similar.
projectile missiles, two, not just
Oh my
one.
God. Whoops.
I'll just put them either end as the bookends of my bookshelf for my nice shelf of I know these people.
So I proofread Lami's book, and there's just no mistakes. It's just like, what am I doing?
That's not true.
Best
There are
model you've ever heard.
Ridiculous
Many of
person. Ridiculous person. Too clever.
I mean, I like this job that you have there, Ed, getting paid to read the amazing book and not have to change anything in it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If Lami could just constantly write books and then just. No, she stopped complimenting Lami. Now it's gone too far.
Yeah, stop.
She's a serial killer. She's not.
Don't do that to us because she would just get away with it anyway.
I mean, I have a good defense at home, so.
So we shall move on to Ed's book.
Ed's turn.
Oh god, it's just a
Yes.
moron left now. Okay, can't believe there's anyone still here.
Oh,
Okay.
so we shall
Oh,
move
we
on
can
to-
all leave if you want. Come on, we're looking forward to this.
Stay for the car crash. I was
We'll be
practicing this
waiting.
earlier,
Here. We're still
and
here.
it was so bad when I was practicing earlier because I started off with a really strong German accent, and I was like, I can't do this. I'm going to offend someone. So I don't think I will do a German
Thank
accent
you.
now. It's do I go? Oh,
I mean, you can just. I was going to introduce you, but go for it.
oh okay.
I'm
You
just
can't
to hear
even
this
go
book.
on.
I have known you for how many years? I literally live down the road from you. I have met you in person, and finding out about your book, I could probably pull your teeth out easier. So I am really looking forward to hearing this.
Okay. That was very cryptic.
You've built this up for like the last 3 years, so the expectations game here.
Oh yeah. Well, I was unannounced for like 2 years because Tradpub's stupid. So yeah, it was a real thing. Anyway.
This is recorded and live and everything, right?
Oh. Oh no, I think I joked about that on Twitter. It's fine.
Yeah,
I
I'm
did
pretty
like
sure Let's face it, whatever
Okay.
line of publishing
Ma-
you've gone through, and we have people from all three here tonight, it's stupid. Publishing is just stupid.
my publishers are not watching this. Not if, in case they are, I don't blame them for that. They've got things to do. But they are not watching this. I can
If
say
you're
what I
gonna-
want. No, they're lovely people. They're lovely people.
I do just have to say, someone has commented, next time Ed pays Lamia to read it, you could just do a switch. I like this idea.
I've just
I mean-
unmuted to say if you're going to start gossiping, I'm here for it. I'm not going to be on mute. If you're going to
Don't
start.
tempt
Give me all the saucy
got-
gossip.
I did my first interview last week, ever author interview, and I got like, well, I didn't get in trouble, I got away with it, but like I said so much stupid stuff. It was awful.
I know,
Really
I
bad.
heard. I listened to it all.
I just
Maybe I
I
should just
blatantly-
stop Ed from talking now and just be like, just read your book, please.
Oh yes,
Because
okay,
it's
sorry.
10 o'clock at night in the
Oh,
UK
okay.
here. So
Do I start? Yeah.
read it.
Hi. Hello, I'm Ed. This is not my actual book because it comes out in January in North America, not the UK. No one bought it in the UK, just North America. This is just an art copy. So that's my cover. There you go. It's an epic fantasy with vampires, werewolves, and sorcerers, but no humans. That's it. I'm not going to. Basically, I'm not doing the start because the start's really boring. I'm going 8 chapters in. So it's the introduction of a new character. A werewolf assassin called Raven Arnspark, one of my favorite characters. She's been in all my failed books for a decade. I won't explain the plot up to this point. All I will say, all you need to know, stop laughing. all you need to know is that basically this book's about the last vampire city, kind of, and werewolves send their criminals to the last vampire city. They do a deal, so they put them in. So the vampires put them in jail for them. In return, the vampires get to take some of their blood because werewolf blood is the best blood. It gives you wings, like Red Bull. And that's where I got the idea from. No. And my character that's about to be introduced, she has to go and catch the wolves if they escape. So she's like a bounty hunter. She's not very happy about it, but she has to do it. And this is her intro chapter, really. So let's see how many practice the accent properly, but let's see how it goes. Don't laugh. The stroke of midnight. Raven Arnspark. As I lie in wait for my prey to arrive, I focus my senses on a scene not far from me. 1 minute the clearing is calm, the only noise a pounding rush of falling water. Then a distant thrashing can be heard, the sound of something racing through the forest. The next moment, a brown blur bursts forth from the trees and races toward the cliff edge. For another second, it seems to slow down as if pondering its next move, but then it leaps off the cliff edge and plunges into the depths of the waterfall, a graceless, desperate lunge into the fast-moving currents. The wolf emerges downstream, sodden and bleeding. A normal wolf would have been smashed to pieces on the rocks, but this wolf is merely weeping from a dozen wounds. It gives one frantic look back, eyes mad with terror, then carries on downstream, racing down a riverbank and keeping pace with the current. It comes to a fork in the river and, bracing itself, leaps back into the water, climbing out the other side moments later and sprinting into the wood beyond. Minutes later, it emerges into another clearing and pauses to get its bearings. It sniffs the air for a moment and allows itself a moment of breath, and then it careers toward the slope of the hill at the edge of the clearing. I can smell him strong now. I can smell his sodden fur and scent of fear. Fear is metal sharp and fierce. Its steel tang fills my nostrils. As he passes the line of trees at the slope's edge, I detach myself from the nearby branch that has been my hiding place this last half-glass and dive through the air, tackling the wolf mid-sprint and tumbling with him across the grass. He is momentarily dazed, and that gives me the moment I need to jump onto his chest and pin him to the ground. He reacts in a frenzy, kicking the air and trying to bite my muzzle, but it is no good. After a few seconds, I tire at his pathetic attempts and snap at his throat, uttering a deep growl that bounces off the hillside and around the clearing. This has a singular effect on my prisoner. 1 minute, a dark brown wolf is pinned to the ground. The next, the air shimmers and the space around it seems to move at a speed faster than the rest. There is a flash of skin and bone and what may be cartilage, and then a naked man is lying on the ground, blood pouring from 3 large torso wounds. He coughs and spits blood onto the grass. I don't understand. I took the shortcut, he mumbles. He's Yorkshire. I back off a little. Then I too seem to vibrate at a frequency different from the air around me, and suddenly my dark fur becomes tanned brown skin, and I stand before him a naked woman, pushing my jet black hair out of my face. If you have to jump off a waterfall, then it's not a fucking shortcut, is it? I reply, edging towards him. He is short in person form, reasonably muscular, but stout as well, with a thick mane of auburn hair that falls across his shoulders and carries on down the back. The impression of strength you get from his body, however, is let down by the face, scrunched up behind a thick beard, like a gerbil trapped in a rug, beady eyes looking in all directions. I feel revulsion looking at him, and I resist the urge to end him now. You can't make me go back there, he says, a little blood coming out with his words. I may as well be a barn animal. Let the vampires bleed me whenever they want. It's not right. He glances down at his wounds again. Look at me. I'm bleeding quite a lot now. And mewling a lot as well, I reply. More a cub than a wolf, aren't you, Tawny Stub? I half spit his name out, a silly little cub out of his depth. Oh, look, Lady Arnspark, I'm not a lady. Don't put that vampire shit on me. I am Raven Arnspark, or I am nothing. Oh, look, Raven, I know the rules, but you don't understand what it's like. Then tell me. It's awful. I'm a prisoner, effectively. Effectively. I mean, I have quarters, but I can't simply wolf run. And they hate me. You can see it in their eyes, and the bleeding is constant. A century of this, Raven. It's not right. Tawny tries to emphasize the last word, but his voice sounds faint and feeble under the open sky. Are you alive? Well, yes, but it's not. Yes, I heard you. It's not right. But neither is slaughtering. Oh no, that's Yorkshire. But neither is slaughtering any of the wolf kind outside of a hunt. But that didn't stop you, did it, Tawny? Your sense of right has a fleeting quality to it, I see. Fine, I committed a crime. Then punish me properly as one wolf to another. Oh, I intend to, I assure you. His scent is finely balanced now. Fear and anger compete for attention. The strong metal tang curbed by a sharp citrus aroma, one of bitter lemons. I wonder which fragrance will win out. Tawny runs a shaking hand through his mane. There was a time when handed over one of our own to the vampires. It would have been an outrage. When did we start pandering to the bloodlords? I smile, a smile so wide my lips pull back to reveal my pearly canines. This always starts off a smile, but it rarely ends that way. There was a time, I begin. That's an interesting way of putting it. Up there with back in the day. Of course, you don't remember that time because you're a beta wolf from Pax Stub. Not a single member in your youthful set predate the Twin War, correct? And yet you all claim to know so much about the pre-war years. You're practically fucking pascribers on the topic. And you're always the first to remind all the other packs how wonderful it was when we still counted vampires as the enemy. Maybe you should take a deep breath, count the moons, and try talking to a wolf who was there. I lean over him, and my hair falls across my face, so that only my eyes and my smile are visible. I didn't expect to feel this rage. You could grow a lemon tree from my perfume alone. And as for pandering to the lords, I've killed more vampires in my time than your entire pack and half a dozen others. So don't fucking talk to me about pandering, you dog skin, or I'll rip your throat out before you can blink. Tawny does not reply to this. You stub pack, you'll never understand. You've known only the idea of a mortal war, not the living of it. You'll never understand the joy of running through miles of forest because you never had it almost taken away from you. At the height of the Twin War, we couldn't run free. Whole swaths of the forest were not ours to roam as we pleased. And now it is all ours, all the forest east of the mountains. Vampires have but first light, while we have the whole Wolflands. And all we have to do is give them a little bit of the blood that fuels their mad dreams of war against the Greys. I pause, breathless. I cannot remember a time I have spoken so much. You speak of rights, I continue. You speak of dignity. I can't touch these things. I can't feel them on my face. I know only the feeling of racing through the forest north 5 days, 10, 15, barely stopping, barely breathing. I come to the northern coast and I take a breath. And then I turn around and I do it again. And as I do, I think, all this is mine. All this is Wolf. And ever will it be so. I turn to Tawny. And a whining cub like you won't put an end to that. That much I can fucking promise you. I shrug. I am myself again. Now, where were we? Let's see. General Packlaw states of fleeing a term with the vampires. Tawny mutters under his breath, "It's not my Packlaw." Makes you forfeit to a serious penalty of permanent pack exile. However, your original crime was slaughter, so your punishment is death. Fuck you, you bitch. I sigh. This is vampire talk. To call a wolf a bitch is stating the obvious, and it sounds ludicrous from another wolf. The implication of inferiority is even stranger. There are no sex slurs in a wolf kind because an alpha is an alpha, regardless of whether they birth the cub or contribute to its birthing. These words are symptoms of a vampiric virus, and one day perhaps I will rip all their throats out to salve it. Tawny spits on the grass. I smell the fish from his last desperate meal. They call you the Midnight Assassin, but you're just a tool. You're no freer than when the forest was taken from us. I smile, ignoring his baiting, and sniff the air. It's going to rain, I say. May as well get this over with. Tawny stands up, wincing from his wounds. He turns so the setting sun is on his face. How does it work? I rip your throat out. It's fast, almost painless. I may be the only wolf who can kill one of our own so quick. Tawny growls, "Oh, lucky me." His eyes flicker towards a hillside for a moment. I shake my head. It's too late for that, I say. Your wounds may have stopped bleeding, but you still wouldn't make it 10 yards. His head drops, and I smell the beginnings of tears. It's not fair to kill one of your own. Great Wolf. It's not fair to kill any of the immortals. There's centuries, maybe millennia more for me to see, and now it's all gone. His voice falters. It's not fair. I stand next to him and steal some of the sun from my own face. It's never fair, Tawny Stub. Do you think death is better if you've had more of life? If death came for me today, I would not welcome him with open arms, little cub. I would fight and snarl and aim for the throat. Death is death. It's always unfair. You've just had your slice of unfairness a little earlier than mine. But you might live forever. I shake my head. How little he knows. I'm not immortal. Nothing is endless, Tawny Stub. It's the great lie. I laugh. Listen to the shit I'm saying. A good sunset always makes me philosophical. Tawny's face falls. He is a beaten wolf. Just get it over with, he says. As you wish. I step back at first, but as Tawny closes his eyes and waits for the end, I am suddenly behind him. I put my lips to his ear. Just one more thing, Tawny, I whisper, soft and languorous. I forgot to mention one little detail. The wolf you slaughtered, he was my nephew. Oh no, begins Tawny, but this is as far as he gets before the air itself moves behind him and a great growl fills his ears. He turns in time to see the sky turn black, midnight black, and then I fall upon him. I pin him down, savoring the moment, and then I give him agony. First I bite his hand off and then his nose, and just as his screams begin to hit my ears, I bite his tongue off, giving a new timbre to his shrieking. Choking on his own blood, pieces of him rapidly falling onto the grass. He gurgles his cries of anguish as the seconds drag on, and somewhere in all his orchestra of pain, he finds the strength, even as I am busy tearing his cheek open, to lift his head up and stare directly into my eyes. Does he see a wolf in there, or does he see a person? I do not know. Then I rip his eyes out as the sun sets behind us. Bit violent there. Sorry.
Well done.
Just to how you like it. Fantastic.
Adding the nightmares to the nightmares.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should have done swearing warning as well. Hope there's no like toddlers.
It's a bit late for that.
I think it's a bit late for general warnings on everything.
Yeah.
Consensus is but that both Ed and Lamia need to narrate their own audiobooks.
And Thea.
I mean, that would be chaos. Damn it. Very kind of you, but
Yeah, but people are here for chaos, so bring it.
Someone said,
Well, thank-
he's Yorkshire. I know.
I mean, you're born and bred over here. I'm not sure you're allowed to do a Yorkshire accent.
I mean, to me, my Yorkshire accent's amazing, but I think to everyone else who hears it, it's pretty bad. So
I'm from neither, and Lancashire and Yorkshire sound pretty similar to me, and my husband tells me that is a terrible, terrible thing to say.
I
That's
am from
pretty bad,
Canada
yeah.
and I don't know what any of them are. So
Yeah.
accents.
Is that
Like
Canadian
my
accent? So
country.
you have a Canadian accent?
Canadian accent? I mean, I don't know.
You
About
just listen to her read for like 10 minutes.
a boot.
Oh no, I can hear it now.
No.
Sorry, sometimes I'm very stupid with accents. Yeah, no, I can hear the Canadian now. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, we have had that whole discussion before on it, but anyway, we will wrap up there because here in the UK, at least, it is now after 10 o'clock at night, and we all have those wonderful lingering images from Ed there to take to bed with us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you
think
for
of
that.
eyes getting ripped out when you sleep. That's the aim.
Mm.
I mean, you've read The Hiding. Eyes getting ripped out is not anything particularly new, and let's just say there's a bit more of it in the Somnia. So,
Looking
That's
forward
all
to
we're
it.
eyes.
I'm really, yeah, you should all, if you've not, you should all read Thea's like The Hiding. I mean, I bet a lot of people listening to this read The Hiding, but it's so good. And I'm reading Reawakenings this weekend, so I'm very excited. Reawakening.
I'm excited too.
I'm actually rereading it for the autumn because it's just perfect. It's just like going up north. It's just actually we should probably just stop and say three
All
cheers for Thea
vibes.
who organised this.
Yay,
And
Thea.
it's partly to celebrate the awakening coming, out soon. And thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure.
Oh, thank you, Lamia, and thank you to all of you for coming, and to Taylor.
How can we buy Reawakening? How can we pre-order it?
So everyone's books, if you look at the bottom here, the description has all of the books and authors that have read tonight listed, and the links to, for the most part, their link tree, so you can get to the Goodreads, you can get to buying the books, you can get to pre-ordering the books, you can follow them on social media. So please do, and if you do read any of them, please leave reviews, because this is what we live and die by. Yeah, all of the links are down there, so please do check them out because everyone here is amazing. And thank you all for coming to listen to us.
Yeah, thanks for the comments, guys. Lots of people. That's awesome.
Good night.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.